Hurrah, it is Friday, but still the same time. 8 minutes, you give me that and I'll try to give you a fascinating snapshot of all the latest in the world of business and money. We're going to start in Venezuela, which certainly faces a deepening economic crisis as the standoff continues between President Nicolas Maduro and his opposition leader Juan Guaido. The US, together with many other nations, is recognizing Mr. Guaido, I should say, as interim president and vowing to cut off the existing government source of revenue. Now, let's take a look at the details, because that could certainly take, in the form of further sanctions. This is according to President Trump. Venezuela already faces various restrictions on accessing US financial markets, but not so far on its vital oil industry. Yeah, very vital. Oil makes up 95% of Venezuela's revenue, so all the money it rakes in, and the US is its biggest customer. More than half of that money, though, goes straight back out again to service the country's debts. Venezuela already faces spiraling prices for everyday goods. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, predicts inflation will rise to 10 million% this year. I mean, that is just, I don't even know how to get your head around it. The inflation at the moment is already at 1.3 million%. The government introduced a new currency last year, the sovereign bolivar, knocking 5 zeros off the existing currency just to mask the effects of inflation. But it's already slumped to more than, 630 to just $1 US. Let's get more. Diego Moya-Ocampos is Principal Analyst for Country Risk at IHS Markit and joins us. Diego, great to have you with us. I don't know what to say.
Thanks,
you know, it is such a sad state of affairs from the outside when you're looking in. Obviously sad for Venezuelans. I mean, the economy is almost reminiscent of, I don't know, what we saw in Zimbabwe, a leader who's taken a fairly healthy economy and turned it into a basket case.
Absolutely. And all this, Aaron, is the result of widespread corruption and epic mismanagement. We're talking about the country which has the largest proven oil reserve in the world, a country which, by the time Chavez came to power in 1999, was producing 3.4 million barrels per day. At the moment, the forecast is that oil production will fall below 900,000 barrels per day. And as you said, the country's main source of revenues, the situation is absolutely critical. Highest inflation in the world, and the economy is only likely to contract more.
Yeah, and talking of contracting more possibly, is if President Trump, the US, goes ahead with sanctions on this vital oil industry. I mean, that will just be, I don't know, the last nail in the coffin almost.
Absolutely. And the oil, as you said, represents not only 96% of foreign exchange, but also 25% of GDP and 50% of fiscal revenues. But we have to remember one thing. Despite the fact that certainly oil revenues are Venezuela's main source of revenue, Venezuela was already in economic contraction before the sharp decline in oil prices. And the country was already experiencing very severe shortages of food and basic goods before the US imposed the first round of sanctions. So the key responsible for all these mess has been, again, widespread corruption and epic mismanagement, and no signs of the country or President Maduro himself having changed the direction of the economy.
Let's just very briefly, let's talk about Juan Guaido. Very young, isn't it? Very, very young, but gaining a lot of recognition and support from countries around the world. Just briefly, would he be the right person to turn the economy around?
Well, the thing with Juan Guaido, he's a fresh face for the opposition. He's perceived as a man of consensus with Venezuelan opposition moderates. He's well respected by the radicals because he was one of the leaders which was part of the wave of protests in previous years. He's a 35-year-old engineer, again, a fresh face to Venezuela's opposition, and certainly one which, with the recognition that he's having from the international community and from, indeed, protests against Maduro and in support of Guaido, who as head of National Assembly has assumed the interim president, promises to improve the economy if he were to take control of government functions. Because as we speak, the main problem for Juan Guaido to take full control of government continues being the military. And the military is no surprise. The High Military Command has been in charge of the economy. They control imports, they control ports, they control all services, and some top military commanders, not all of them, but many, are involved in drug trafficking, human trafficking, fuel smuggling, illegal mining, and they have little economic incentives to withdraw support from
Diego,
Maduro.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to cut him up. I've got a very short program, unfortunately. I would have liked more time with you. But we appreciate it. Diego Moya-Ocampos, thank you very much, mate. Have a lovely weekend.